Today we've got Mike Williams, who's going to give us a little intro about himself and what he's been working on.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Ben. So my name is Mike Williams, or Yorumi on social, and I'm pretty obsessed with Nocode and marketplaces. So I built and launched Studiotime, which is kind of like an Airbnb of music studios, or what it's been called, using Nocode one evening, and then recently just relaunched Thinkbox, which is kind of like a startup studio or agency, I guess you could say, that focuses on using no code and low code to build marketplaces.
What drove you to do this what was Thinkbox before, and what's what drove the pivot?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So probably kind of like your story, I'm more product focused myself. So not highly technical, or at least don't focus on it. So I had a team, and basically a small core team of designers and developers that I've built and launched other startups with in the past. So we were getting a lot of inbound for projects that were fairly, I would say, robust as far as the functionality, so larger builds. And what we I think we started seeing was that there was a trend more towards for people looking to build and launch MVPs more so than fully robust products. Of course, in the early stages, smaller budgets, and then naturally just kind of shifted over more towards using lower code and no code, so that way we could help them kind of accelerate that. Not only the build, but be a little bit more resourceful on our end and kind of reduce the budgets. So
is it less of you working on Thinkbox now and more sort of full stack product people, I guess?
Yeah. So I would actually say that we kind of cut down the team a little bit more. So less actual developers, more me kind of working hands-on the business side to help people understand, I would say actually more the possibilities right now of like, what can you actually build with no code? And then kind of working through on the business kind of, I would say, like concept validation, using that initial kind of those no code tools just to help them quickly get something where they can kind of see like some form of product quicker. And that's just me, myself. And then also kind of, I would say more of a designer that's actually kind of transitioned more into actually no code themselves.
Yeah. I think the sort of power of no code seems to be that whatever you originally started doing, you can become like the product builder yourself, which is just like a really empowering thing, especially for people who have wanted to have that like power before.
Exactly.
You said about the fact that a lot of the times at the moment it's more like you're trying to teach people or show people what's possible, because I'm having the same thing right now, in that if I speak to someone and say, oh, did you know you can automate a bunch of things without code, and you can do this thing without code, they're always like, okay, so what can I do or what can't I do? It's more like they don't know what they don't know. So how do you go into those conversations and like say to people, you can do like probably 90% of the things that you're thinking of in your head without code?
Yeah. So that's a really good point. So I think that when people understand all the different possibilities or options, it might be a little bit confusing or even overwhelming. Versus just if they don't know all those options, then I think it makes them kind of think through thoroughly of what do they actually need to do, and what are those kind of almost just prioritizing those first kind of features and functionality. So that's actually why I love MakerPad and the video kind of tutorials. Is it's almost just like research on their end to understand the possibilities, and then kind of relate that to their concept, which is like, okay, now that I know what I want to build and how this might apply, let me then understand what I actually need to build. So I actually kind of, when I get a lot of people that ask me those questions of like, hey, what's possible? And from a lot of the YouTube videos and whatnot. And I actually work more on the actual kind of like business concept validation first, which is like helping them understand what exactly they need to build. And then from there is like, okay, what's the best kind of like no code tool or platform that they can use to then achieve, that kind of, I would say, required functionality. Otherwise, it's just, a bunch of different kind of integrations, and I think it kind of deviates, and it's almost like feature creep with no code.
I don't know if there's a problem or like a secondary effect of like being able to build something so quickly is that maybe you shouldn't. Like it doesn't mean that you should, and it means that you can launch it and you can kill it quickly. But then does that allow for more like half-baked stuff getting launched, or just having like a bloated product? I know like I've launched a bunch of things with MakerPad, and a lot of it is like sort of the testing stuff. So yeah, it is interesting to see that is becoming its own thing in the no-code world too.
I think it then kind of brings about a question too, because I know, I was following you closely during the early days of MakerPad, and it's just like at a certain point, if you spend too much time thinking through things and you already have the ability to take something in the product, that ability to build and launch something and get that feedback, you kind of weigh that versus spending too much time not actually having something. So it is kind of a challenge, I think.
Yeah, of course. I think it's just one of those skills that you hone over time, and you figure out, oh yeah, people don't need like the 12 startups in 24 hours. I think I did that like a while ago. And things like that. It's more like, a big moment for me was thinking of how do I focus on doing less, which may seem ironic to some people seeing what we do, but that's where MakerPad came from. It was like, let's focus on like the core, like no-code education, and that's basically our core. And then other things around that obviously help push that forward, but it's still, we're focusing on one thing really, which is that. Yeah, so tell us some things about your products or what you're doing, sort of what have you seen people build, and what sort of impact has that had by using no code?
Yeah, so I tend to focus mainly on marketplaces. So a lot of, it's not a great time to kind of be in the Airbnb for X if it's spaces, but kind of seeing a shift right now as far as online marketplaces connecting people online for services. So I'm seeing a lot of those, a lot of people that are looking to take, their idea to kind of live marketplace, and a lot of kind of no code marketplaces being built in that kind of space. Which I think is pretty powerful, just connecting people, to be able to offer their services online. So a lot of what I work with is ShareTribe as far as the actual kind of tool within that space. I've used Webflow some, not as much as you. So haven't done a ton of marketplaces in that. And I would say with kind of no code marketplaces, I tend to see them more in like the managed, kind of curated, vetted kind of initial approach to it.
Are you seeing more and more of like the service marketplace model sort of becoming a thing? I think I saw, is it Roger Dickey, who just launched like a bathroom renovation marketplace, service marketplace thing?
I saw that. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So
yeah. Do you do anything within service marketplaces, or is it mostly like a self-serve type of?
Yeah, I would say within this, I definitely kind of cross from spaces, services, goods and products. So touch like those three, I would say like those three different main types. I think that there's like an interesting kind of different approaches you can take. Like you did mention like listings, right? So in the mechanics of marketplaces, like basically if there's a need and a willingness for supply to pay just to have visibility, almost like a job board model, then, those are kind of interesting, which I think we'll probably see some services like that. I know you guys have like the marketplace for hire. So, that could, in essence, be like a sub marketplace on MakerPad potentially. And that would be, I would say, probably conducive to people willing to pay just to have the visibility within that, right? And then kind of figure out like, okay, how deep within like that transaction layer or even transaction at all do you kind of want to touch? So I think that's like a common question a lot of people ask themselves if they're looking to start one.
Yeah, and what is there like a framework you think of when telling people how to like navigate that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I think it also, that's a really good question. There's so many factors involved with that. I think it kind of really comes down to the market you're in. I would say also who specifically you're targeting and the existing kind of solutions and the value that you're trying to add. So for instance, in the case of like Studiotime, that's not very managed, but in the early days, there was such a need for studios just to have the ability to create a listing and have that visibility and be discoverable, that they were willing to pay. So that's kind of why we have our subscription model on that. And in essence, we didn't really focus on the actual kind of transaction layer in the early days. We use that subscription to bootstrap it. So, in that market, there was a willingness to pay to just be a part of it and have that listing. It's really, I think it comes down to kind of like the market, the value that you're adding to them, any other solutions. And then I would say as a business, and, given kind of time and like everything, time and resources, right? So if you have, with that in mind, can you tap into the actual transaction layer? And with that, if you do, then, plan on a lot of support. But as you know, as soon as you start taking payments online, then that kind of changes the game. So
yeah, definitely. Do you see the fact that well, I think I see a lot of people who realize they can build something now with no code, like start to build something, then they'll say, okay, now what next? How do I get my first 10 customers or whatever it is? And I'm like, that's the thing we're not teaching. We're teaching you how to build a thing. We're not like teaching you how to build a startup. Like there's 1,000,001 places out there that can teach you that. Do you have like any, because obviously marketplaces are traditionally like the chicken and egg type thing. And do you see any ways that no code has helped validate any of these assumptions early on, or like help get a marketplace bootstrapped off the ground and get it kick it off?
Yeah. So I actually, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I think about, right? And then I kind of break it into two different kind of groups. So I think about like, who are like the hobbyists or tinkers that basically just like have ideas and want to just take that to some kind of like product, right? So the people that just like building things. And then I think about on the other end, like what are existing businesses or people that have communities that then look at no code and they're looking to basically leverage no code to build a product that they can introduce into their community. So a lot of like the kind of like, I would say projects we get are people that approach me about marketplaces. And the fun ones, of course, are the ones that have existing communities. So they have people's attention and are providing some kind of value to them. So that way they can figure out, okay, based off all this feedback and what people want, how can we then leverage no code and some of these kind of tools to then build this initial marketplace, and they immediately have like a group of people that they can take it to and get their first users, right? Like obviously that's a lot easier versus the other end, which is probably like, the 12 startup kind of challenges where it's like, hey, how quickly can we build products? And we'll just kind of keep rapidly launching them and see which one kind of takes off. Or they, maybe just build for fun. So
yeah. What about the ones that are sort of sit in the middle where, I think, I don't know, I can't think of an idea off the top of my head, but I think there's a need for this type of service that I want to create a marketplace for. Because I see a lot of people, that's probably the most common thing that people are trying to build is a marketplace. Whether they call it a marketplace or not, it's essentially like, I would say Uber would be a marketplace at its core. Same, obviously, Airbnb. There's different variations, right? And I think that
correct.
A lot of people think of the marketplace as almost the epitome of a no-code project, in that if you could build that and have like a user and a seller, and then there's a service layer, and there's like a payment thing, and there's like maybe a messaging component and stuff, like that's almost like all the best things you can have you've built with no code in one place. And I wonder if there's a way of people to think more of building these marketplaces, or whether it's just there is always that chicken and egg problem, and you're going to have to build a community slowly and do some things like that. But maybe there is some no code solutions to help them on the way. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that's a great area to think about. Like, where could there be some innovation? I think that there is going to be a challenge if they're not a domain expert or don't have an existing community of that kind of chicken and egg problem that they're going to face early. So, but I do think on another, I would say just another kind of comment that I have is that I think no code is great for definitely managed marketplaces in the very beginning, because there is, marketplaces are typically capital intensive to start. And so that was kind of like a barrier to entry also. So leveraging no code not only gives you the ability to take something to market quickly using less time and resources, but I think it allows you to operate, right, using a reduced kind of capital cost off that. So I think that's just like another kind of great benefit of it, and obviously like the ability to kind of make changes and improve the product.
Where do you sort of see this no-code space now, and where do you think it will go in the future? Maybe
Yeah.
12 months, and then 5 years
Yeah.
or something.
I guess it depends how much you and I push it forward, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On Twitter,
Yeah.
trying to. So I think that now, I mean, given the kind of current times right now, and I think that there's just like a kind of, I've seen like a huge increase of people, just the interest and attention in the space from the kind of hobbyist side. I think that that's definitely growing very quickly. And so I think that, that's probably going to continue growing, and as people continue to share more content, and then a lot of these kind of tools and platforms grow, their user base. And I think a lot of their kind of like education or academy kind of initiatives, like that'll definitely be a big help. I think on the other end, a lot of the existing kind of larger businesses and organizations are actually kind of looking into it, thinking about, like, as you're kind of seeing, how can they, use low code or no code as far as introducing some kind of automation, and especially now to kind of reduce the dependency on customer support, and then a lot of the kind of tasks that can be automated using some of these like tools to build out like internal solutions. So I think like the hobby side is kind of growing probably a lot quicker than that, which obviously creates like a lot more just general awareness, I think.
Yeah.
And then, if we kind of like see on the other end that kind of, catch up, then hopefully that kind of, allows a lot of these tools and platforms to kind of build out their enterprise side too. So
Yeah, for sure.
I see it growing, and definitely not stopping or slowing down. So
No, yeah, I agree. I think it might just look differently in a few years. I think it might just not be like no code in general. It might just be, this is how we build a solution. It just happens to
yeah,
be the the piece in the middle is with no code tools. Do you have any
totally.
like interesting no code solutions that you run to automate anything, or like save you X amount a week, like X amount of hours a week and things like that? Or
As far as like, let me think, it's specifically like what saves me a lot of time. I would say just like different integrations, to be honest, as far as like just notifications for running, like say for instance, Studiotime. We use a lot of just like different kind of like lightweight integrations and notifications. So that way it just makes it easy to run kind of like on the fly and mobile. So, wherever we are. But that's probably just using like ChargeBee and like Stripe and Zapier.
is there anything else you want to like chat about with no code stuff? Or
Yeah, I think we kind of covered the basics on that, and then of course kind of brought it back to marketplaces, since that's pretty much guaranteed to say that 10 times every sentence. So
yeah,
yeah, but no, you brought up a really good point, which is saying that it might not be referred to no code as much, so not as much as like how you do it, but like what you're building. And I do think that like, in a few years or maybe a little bit longer, no code is just a means to build a business. And it's not this like kind of like grouped as far as like, hey, you're just like no coders or whatnot.
Yeah. I think there's just like a danger of getting stuck in the no code circle of like, if you keep building no code stuff for no coders, I worry that is that just showing other people that it's like a smaller community and it's not like this big, huge thing, which I think it is. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people who I speak to see this huge like capability of what can happen. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how we all need to like band together and make sure we show off like really cool shit.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you do best, is just showing off like what's the like latest, coolest thing, examples of, no code kind of projects. But I will say like on the other end, as far as just like people that, might just be interested in the space, like I think there is just like this, like on the general, when you think like outside the very kind of smaller no code community, there's just like this oh wow kind of like aha moment that a lot of people have, where it's just like a total game changer to them. And you probably see it with like people, request to hire for projects and whatnot. That's mainly kind of where I see it. So.
Awesome. Well, yeah. What do you want to plug today?
I mean, not a whole lot. Probably just social. So I always like to share and try to like push it forward as far as just building some general awareness. But yeah, I'm Yo Rumi on social, so on Twitter, and then also do some YouTube videos that you can see on MakerPad. So
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for taking the time, and we'll speak to you soon.
yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. This is great.